Hello and welcome to another episode of Historically Speaking. Today we have a very special guest with us who needs no introduction. It is former minister, I would say cabinet minister, government of India, congressman, if I can say.
No, I'm still a congressman.
Yes, still a congressman, an author of several books, and a highly celebrated IFS officer, Mani Shankar Aiyar ji. Thank you
Thank you
for
very much.
giving me time and allowing me to have this podcast with
You're welcome.
you. My first question to you is that you've written a lot of books which are memoirs which reflect on your time period as in the MEA and as an officer who was, and also as an in very leadership positions posted in different countries, and then you come back. Then you joined a government of India. Then you are a part of the INB ministry, and then you become someone who's very close to Rajiv Gandhi. So you've written all these books. What were your reasons for writing these books?
I had to earn a living. For when I left the Foreign Service, I had left it prematurely, so my pension wouldn't amount to very much. And of course, for the whole of 1990 and into half of 1991, I was unemployed. There was no income coming from current work. So I started writing. I wrote a column for Sunday magazine called Money Talk. And for some strange reason, it was unanticipated by me and certainly unanticipated by Sunday that Money Talk would be such a hit.
I think it's got to do with the name also, Money Talk.
Well, anyway, it was a huge hit. And then Avik Sarkar, who was running Sunday magazine, permitted me to market the column to a lot of language newspapers and journals, and even to English speaking journals like something in Bombay. So I was able to earn from several sources. So in 1991, I think in that calendar year, I earned more than I'd ever earned in the past. So where I'd expected to be broke, I really had a leg up in my standard of living. And then as it went on progressively, when I joined India Today, I was described as the highest paid Indian journalist. So we really reached a kind of economic Valhalla as a result of this writing. And I started putting these articles together, not only for Sunday, but I was given a free hand to write where I wanted. So I wrote all over the place. And my first book was called Remembering Rajiv. And that came out a year after he was killed. And is the only bestseller I've ever written. And I suspect that the reason was that Rupa had priced it at 35 rupees. So it was in two parts. Before the assassination, the articles I'd written, and after the assassination, the articles that I wrote. Then came a year in Parliament. Then came my Pakistan papers, where I persuaded Foreign Secretary Mani Dikshit to declassify my last report from Karachi. And he said, since they're your views and not the government of India's views, I'll declassify them. And then with some updating, they were published by Rupa again. No, not by Rupa, by UBS PD as the Pakistan papers. I then did I edited a 4-volume work on Rajiv Gandhi's India. Then came the book of which I'm most proud, which was Confessions of a Secular Fundamentalist.
Yes.
That was almost exactly 20 years ago. And after that, there came a collection of my columns for the Indian Express, which was called A Time of Transition, from Rajiv Gandhi to Manmohan Singh. And now I've produced these 3 books of memoirs. Yes, the previous books too dealt with either my own life or the life I was seeing around me, or with my thoughts and concepts, which were often regarded as somewhat out of the ordinary, which is why I came to the conclusion that I was really a maverick. I got into the Foreign Service with great difficulty because I was labeled a communist. But Jawaharlal Nehru personally let me in. That was a maverick way of coming in. I then, in the Foreign Service, was very fortunate to not have a Foreign Service boss. I had KB Lal, a man of very wide and liberal views. So I did a lot of things under him, and he was really proved a very good boss. Then I had a terrible time under a man called Shelvankar in Hanoi. So my term there ended in 9 months. I came to Delhi. I was looked at with very great suspicion. But within a couple of weeks, my directors were asking me, why have you been told that you're a very difficult officer? So I was interested in economics, and I was reporting really to the Commerce Ministry, where the secretary was the same ambassador, K.V. Lal, not to the Ministry of External Affairs, because nobody then knew anything about economic diplomacy. That's changed, but I'm talking about the late 60s. And then I went back to Brussels only because K.V. Lal got posted back to Brussels. But my posting was to the European Economic Community, where there was a major change coming in our trade outlook because the UK joined the common market and they had signed a document called the Joint Declaration of Intent, which related to the South Asian Commonwealth countries. But between the signing of the JDI and our arriving in 1973, May in Brussels, the, the two countries had split up because of the Bangladesh Liberation War. And three out of the four of us didn't have diplomatic relations with each other. So we would secretly meet in the Sri Lankan mission. And then, because the community said they would not talk to us individually, they would only talk to us together. And diplomatically, we were prevented from talking to them together. But we managed to get a common point. And then, when Pakistan recognized Bangladesh at the time of the OIC summit in Lahore, then diplomatic relations got established with all concerned. And I, in fact, made the first South Asia statement in GATT, which is now called the World Trade Organization. From there, I was posted to Baghdad, which is a posting I thoroughly enjoyed, but I'm afraid my ambassador didn't like me. So it was a running battle. And then I was given independent charge as the Consul General in Karachi. And that was the high point of my diplomatic life. I then came back to Delhi, as you said. I was made the spokesman of the ministry. I was then transferred as the head of the UN division. And just as everything was going swimmingly well for me, Indira Gandhi punished me for my virtues. She was so impressed with my work on external publicity after the invasion of the Golden Temple. I was reaching out to the Sikh diaspora, primarily to tell them that the Harminder Sahib had not been affected. That she decided my place was not in MEA, but in the INB ministry. And I got transferred on her orders to the INB ministry, where no one knew what to do with me because they all had regular jobs and mine was completely irregular. So I hated that period of my life. But then she was assassinated. Rajiv became the prime minister. I had been at school at Cambridge with him, but I barely knew him because at school he was 3 years junior to me. And a boy who's 3 years junior to you in a school in which you stay typically for 5 years is very, very junior. So I didn't know him. But of course, like in all schools, the juniors know their seniors.
Yes.
So he knew me.
Yes.
And at Cambridge, he belonged to the rich set. He was taking Sonia Gandhi to the best restaurants in town. And I was looking for a girlfriend who'd cook for me because I was so impecunious. So our worlds did not cross at all. And afterwards, he became a pilot. I was in the Foreign Service. There was no way our paths would cross. And so it was really only as a joint secretary that I established a relationship with a chap who had never thought he'd become PM and whom none of us had thought would become PM, but who had become PM. And it was that official relationship which, over a period of 5 years, got completed, got completed into a warm personal relationship with him. And while many people think that it was he who inducted me into politics, it was I who asked him whether I could leave the Foreign Service. And he was very reluctant to let me go. And he tried his best to stop me. Then eventually he yielded. And the first sentence he said to me was, you know, Mani, this system will never ever accept you.
And why did he say that?
I think it's because the system never ever accepted Rajiv.
Okay.
You know, the professional politician starts at the grassroots.
Yeah.
Rajiv was helicoptered into the prime ministership, and he in turn helicoptered me into an MPship. So both of us did not have the grassroots connection with the party, which most of our colleagues, many of those who were senior to us in terms of time, and all those who were junior to us, they had to struggle to get to wherever they were. And here were two privileged people who were helicoptered into their respective positions.
Sir, I want to interrupt you on this point. There's someone else also in the book you mention a great deal, which is P.V. Narasimha Rao, who was the Home Minister of Rajiv Gandhi's government and also a very trusted ally of his mother.
Not ally,
a
trusted
minister
deputy of his mother.
of his mother. Even he didn't have a base as far as the party was concerned.
No, you're quite wrong.
A base in his home state.
He had a base. He was the chief minister of Andhra Pradesh.
Yes, but then majority of his politics was in Delhi.
No, the majority of his politics began in opposition to the Razakars when Hyderabad was still the personal property of the Nizams. And it is from there that he grew into an Andhra politician after the Wazirat or the Nizamate was dissolved. And he rose in the ranks of the Andhra Pradesh, the composite Andhra Pradesh Congress, into becoming their leader in 1973 or 1972. And he was then faced with the Mulki movement, which has now resulted, after all these years, in the division of Andhra Pradesh into Telangana and Simandhra. So he had a major political base and could revert to it, which is why that huge, long expressway in Hyderabad city is proudly named the P.V. Narasimha Rao something or the other.
Also, not to mention that he was a great prime minister, someone who I admire a great deal. You, in your book, The Rajiv That I Knew, you refer to him constantly as RG. How close was your relationship with Rajiv Gandhi, former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, for you to call him RG?
I never called him RG to his face. To his face, I always called him Sir.
Sir. Okay.
I never called him anything but Sir. And he began by calling me Mani Shankar, and then realized over time that Shankar was my father's name.
Yeah.
And that I called myself Mani. So I was Mani to him, although I was 3 years older. And he was Sir to me, although he was 3 years younger. And I never called him anything else. I never had a relationship with him other than the official. The only time he ever came to my house was to condole when my mother died. And he never had me over to his personal house. So our relationship was basically an official one. But the gap between a joint secretary and a prime minister is a huge gap.
Yes, it is.
Which is not easy to bridge. But because we were of similar backgrounds, and somehow he seemed to enjoy my company, and I was deeply impressed that a chap who was so unimpressive in school should make such an excellent prime minister. that I think my admiration of him seeped to his side and he valued me. But in Chinmoy Gharekha's book, Chinmoy was another joint secretary in PMO. He's written a book called Centers of Power, in which he says in 1985, October, this was the year I had joined PMO, Rajiv said to Chinmoy that, a lot of people are telling me that Mani Shankar is very bad for me. And so they are pressing me to get him transferred. Do you think we can send him as an ambassador somewhere? And Chinmoy replied that also, yes, of course, we can easily find him an ambassadorship and send him off. And then Rajiv apparently said to him, I didn't know this until I read the book, which came out only last year. Rajiv said, but I like Mani. So can I keep him? And Chinmoy was another joint secretary, of course, said yes. So it seems as if we clicked at some personal level.
Okay.
And when he allowed me to join politics, he added a very important coda. He said, I want you to come back to the Prime Minister's office as an officer on special duty. I thought that was a surprising thing to say. So I looked quizzical. And then he paid me the highest compliment that I've ever received. He said, you see, I want you back because whenever I give you a task, you only come back to me to say you've accomplished it. And that is why I want you back in PMO. But of course, he lost the election.
Yes.
So that never happened.
You were a part of the special publicity group escorting foreign press people to the site of the Harmandir Sahib and Golden Temple. How you've described that time in your book as being particularly tensed and something stressful. You've also mentioned that your purpose was to just, as you've already hinted, that it was to tell the Sikh diaspora that Harmandir Sahib was respected and was not harmed. But how do you describe that period? And do you think that that special publicity group was necessary? What was it?
Oh, absolutely. It was necessary because there was a lot of outreach that was required. I had been the Joint Secretary External Publicity. My successor was Salman Haider. And I don't think he was ever very happy about me being inducted into the Special Publicity Group when he felt that his division had all the resources at its command. But I was, and the first task given to me was to fly almost every day from Delhi to Amritsar in an Air Force plane, taking with me foreign correspondents who were flooding into India because the story of the Indian Army's invasion of the Golden Temple was not a domestic story alone. It was a big international story.
Yes, as it continues.
And my job was to escort them to Amritsar, to then introduce them to General K.S. Brar, to whom I'm now related after my daughter married a Sikh boy. And General K.S. Brar was an outstanding TV personality. Mark Tully told me, this guy would make an absolutely superb TV actor. So he would dramatically explain what the Indian Army had done in the Golden Temple. I would then be asked to escort these foreign journalists around the parikrama. And I had been instructed that you show them the damage to the Akal Takht. You explain to them that the Akal Takht is a secular institution. It's not part of religion. It's where, well, it is in the sense that that is where the Guru Granth Sahib is kept at night. But otherwise, it's not part and parcel of the Sanctum Sanctorum.
Yes.
And that the Sanctum Sanctorum is the Harmandir Sahib. And the Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, had been very particular in giving orders to the Indian Army that they must not shoot in the direction of the Harmandir Sahib. So it was my job to tell these journalists that please look at the Harmandir Sahib, it has not been damaged. And from this work with the foreign correspondents, I was then tasked with reaching out to the Sikh diaspora. Now, that diaspora extends from Hong Kong all the way to Seattle and to Vancouver. So it covers the breadth of the world. And our Indian embassies knew where the Sikh populations were and which was the media that they were looking at. And through them, through the Indian embassies, I fed them with as much audiovisual information as I could, material as I could, for those ethnic channels to persuade them that we had meant no harm, that we had only wanted to attack the terrorists, and keeping hidden all the other ugly facts of what actually happened in the Golden Temple, including the fact that they idiotically chose a day when there were a lot of Sikh pilgrims in the surroundings, and several of them got killed. They also didn't want to bring out the fact that they had thought the Bendranwale would be caught in minutes by throwing CN gas into the Akal Takht, not knowing, they didn't have the intelligence, that all the apertures in the Akal Takht had been covered. So you couldn't possibly have thrown the gas. And they sent in a young Sikh lieutenant along with a small patrol to do this canister throwing. And they were all shot dead because there was no intelligence that even in the staircase that leads from the road to the parikrama, there were apertures through which you could keep a rifle. And most of the patrol were killed before they ever entered the parikrama.
Yes.
And those who did enter the parikrama, they faced fierce artillery organized by General Shahbag Singh, the hero of the Bangladesh Liberation War, who then directed the fire at the parikrama where these people were going forward. They never reached the Akal Takht. And that boy, whom I interviewed subsequently, and who received a petrol pump from the Petroleum Ministry and has been very, very grateful to me. I don't want to give his name because he says that terrorists are still after him and his parents. So I'm not going to give you his name, but I interviewed him. And when I did, on behalf of Doordarshan, he said to me, "Sir, can you please ask your camera team to go out?" I said, "Sure." Then he said, "I just want to say something to you. I am a soldier of the Indian Army, and I've joined the army knowing that I may have to give my life. But please tell me, why should my parents be threatened because of my position?" I said, "Look, I can't answer your question. My job is to interview you. And after I've interviewed you, I'll check with your boss and I'll check with my bosses and we'll try and suppress this interview." So when I was interviewing me, he gave me all these details. So it's an authentic story, but one that has been kept suppressed deliberately. And in fact, the film I was commissioned to make, Saath Hi Saath Chale, went to the 14th Sikh Regiment in Patna, which was the one that rebelled. And now they don't have a copy in the film's division. So I'm afraid my first artistic endeavor has simply gone down the drain.
You aside the incident that when you were supposed to meet former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, you heard the message that Mrs. Gandhi had been
No,
shot.
I was to meet the Home Minister.
Minister, yeah,
The
Narasimha
Home
Rao.
Minister,
Yeah, and
who had been shifted to the Human Resource Development Ministry.
and you heard that Mrs. Gandhi.
Oh, he was going to be, sorry, he was still the Home Minister.
Yes, and Mrs. Gandhi had been shot, and the issue of her succession, you say you probably thought it would be Pranab Mukherjee, former President Pranab Mukherjee, and then someone said that it would be Rajiv Gandhi, and you were absolutely shocked and surprised at this particular choice.
Yes,
Why
I
do you?
was.
Why? Because you barely knew him.
I
How do you
knew
think?
Rajiv.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't know him well,
yeah,
but I knew him sufficiently
yeah,
to be completely apolitical.
yeah.
And although he was brought in, as he said, to help mummy, he didn't say he'd come in to become prime minister. He didn't say, I want to be in parliament. Or say that he wanted to be a minister. He just said that I came in to help mummy. I said, how can a chap who has shown no interest in politics and who hasn't participated in the political life of the country, although he has been a joint secretary, general secretary for the Youth Congress and the Student Congress, how can he become the prime minister? And what Pranab Mukherjee, as he has clarified to me personally, said is that I only said that the precedent was that after the unexpected death of a prime minister, we always had an interim prime minister.
Yes.
He said we had an interim prime minister after Jawaharlal Nehru.
Nehru's death, yeah.
We also had an interim prime minister after Lal Bahadur Shastri. It happened to be the same man, Gulzari Lal Nanda. But then the prime minister was chosen by the party. And in the case of Morarji Desai, his entire cabinet left him. So that's how he ceased to be prime minister. So he said, in these circumstances, I thought it appropriate that now that Indira Gandhi had gone, we could have an interim prime minister before we chose Rajiv Gandhi as the prime minister. Because there was a general consensus that we needed a Gandhi, or that the consensus within the Congress, that we needed a Gandhi at the head of the government. That you may agree or disagree with that, but that was the Congress consensus.
But that consensus
So
still remains.
he made the mistake of bringing up the precedent. And his enemies in the party, and there were many, because he was so close to Indira Gandhi,
Yes.
they spread this canard that he had said, I should be the prime minister. He never said it. But the consequence was that he was expelled from the party. He was expelled from the party for 4 years. This is a story told to me by Pranab. And cross my heart, hope to die. I'm telling you what he told me. He said in 1988, 4 years after he'd been kicked out of the party, there's a chap called Mallu, who was joint general secretary in charge of Tripura, came to him and said, the prime minister wants you to go to Tripura and canvass for the Congress. So Pranab said, well, how can I canvass for the Congress? I've been expelled from the party. So Mallu was relatively junior. So he asked Santosh Mohan Dev, who was the MP for Silchar next to Tripura, and asked him to meet Pranab. And when Santosh came and said the same thing, he said, I don't understand. Here is the Prime Minister who has expelled me from the Congress. How can he be asking me to canvass for the Congress? I need to meet with him. So they arranged a meeting. And Rajiv apparently told Pranab, I never expelled you. I didn't even know you were expelled. And it's a hardly believable story.
Yes.
But when I was suspended in 2017 for about 9 months, Sonia Gandhi told me many years later on the telephone that she didn't know I'd been suspended. So sometimes these kind of horrendous mistakes take place, they do take place. But I think we need to get the record right. That Pranab Mukherjee was requested to come back to helping the Congress after it was clarified that his expulsion was a subordinate act at a time when there was great confusion. And after 1988, he was always regarded as second only to the main leader of the party, who was first Narasimha Rao, then Sitaram Kesri, and finally Sonia Gandhi.
Rajiv Gandhi was led and advised by his advisors. You mentioned Arun Singh and Arun Nehru, and you say that they advised him on almost everything from Shah Bano to Shilanayas, which eventually happened. So you put a great deal of emphasis on the advisors and not Rajiv Gandhi, who ultimately took the decisions.
I think you need to clarify to the audience that I was referring to Arun Singh in the context of Operation Brass Tacks. I was referring to Arun Nehru in the context of the Shah Bano case and the opening of the locks at the Babri Masjid. And I was neither of them was there
Huh.
when the Shilanyas took place, which was on the advice of Dhawan and Fotedar. So you must distinguish between these different advisors
Yes.
and why they fell out of favor. In the case of Arun Singh, he was a close personal friend of Rajiv's right through his school days at Cambridge and even subsequently. His own profession was that of a business executive in a Calcutta multinational. And when Rajiv came into politics, I wrote somewhere that Arun Singh, that Rajiv asked Arun to come to help him in politics. And when Sonia Gandhi saw that, she got her private secretary George to ring me to say I'm wrong. It was not Rajiv who invited Arun Singh. It was Arun Singh who came to Delhi and got stuck like a leech to Rajiv Gandhi. So whichever way it was, he was certainly the closest advisor during the time that Rajiv was not the president of the Congress or the prime minister, and lasted only less than a year when he came into PMO. And I don't know why he was asked to move. I suspect it was because he was getting himself too high a profile. Whatever the thing was, Rajiv knew that Arun Singh's main interest was these cardboard soldiers, that he was interested in defense questions. So instead of being a parliamentary secretary, which he was in PMO, he actually promoted him as a minister of state in the defense ministry, which at the time was headed by the prime minister, who was also the defense minister. So he was actually being promoted. It so happened that my office in PMO was next to the cabinet room. So the first person Arun Singh met after he was informed that he was no longer in PMO was me. And I could see that he was very upset. But he accepted it. Now, he had a role with regard to Operation Brass Tacks and Bofors that I find condemnable. That is why the fault for both the aggravation unnecessarily of Operation Brass Tacks and the bad name that attached to Rajiv Gandhi when Arun Singh betrayed him on the question of Bofors, that is what I have looked at with a jaundiced eye. I've also said in a footnote that I've tried to meet Arun Singh to get his side of the story, but he refuses to talk about Rajiv Gandhi or his time in the government of India. And therefore, if he refuses to talk, how can I get him to answer any questions? So I've given my version of it. With regard to, and I think there was a very unholy alliance between him and Sundarji, which proved really damaging for Rajiv Gandhi. I've explained that at length in my book on Rajiv. Then comes Arun Nehru. Arun Nehru was inherited by Rajiv from Indira Gandhi. He too was a business executive, I think with Asian Paints or something. And Indira Gandhi brought him in. And under her tutelage, Arun Nehru grew into such an important congressman that when he decreed that Rajiv Gandhi will be the successor, the whole party fell in line. And he became virtually the voice of the Congress, inside the Congress. And then he misused his power. He was really a quasi BJP man. He had these ideas about Bangladeshi Muslim immigrants coming into Assam. He was the one who wanted to conduct a kind of census of these people. He wanted to throw the immigrants out. He also felt that there is a Hindu vote bank which we should be seeking. And he found his opportunity when the chief ministership of UP was changed, when N.D. Tiwari was brought into the ministry here and there was a post vacant. he then picked on an obscure MLA in UP called Vir Bahadur Singh, not Vir Bhadra Singh, Vir Bahadur Singh, to be the chief minister. He just ordered it, and all the MLAs of the Congress party raised their hands. So when Vir Bahadur Singh became the chief minister, there is a very interesting story told by Devki Nandan Agarwal, who's an impassioned Ram Mandir man, in a book on the Babri Masjid, edited by A.G. Noorani. There, from that book, I learned that in December, that was about a month after he'd been sworn in, Vir Bahadur Singh arrived in Ayodhya, met with a delegation led by a retired judge of the UP High Court. It included Devki Nandan Agarwal, and they said to him that the locks have been put on the Babri Masjid not by judicial order but by executive order, and therefore by executive order you can remove it. This was reported back to Arun Nehru, who then said, well, get hold of the sessions judge in Faizabad and get him to reopen a case that had been closed since 1950.
Yes.
It hadn't been activated. And he said that and he got the sessions judge to call in the superintendent of police, or was it the senior superintendent of police, who said that if the locks are open, we can easily control the law and order situation. Then the district magistrate came, and he said the same thing. So the Faizabad Sessions Court judge gave a judgment that the locks can be opened. And this is also stage managed that within 10 minutes of the order being given, that it had been given, reached Ayodhya, the locks were immediately opened, and huge numbers of Hindu devotees poured in to worship at the Ram Lalla statue that was located actually in the premises of the Babri Masjid. So when as an MP, I went to Ayodhya, and the pujari at the Ram temple, or the Ram Lalla Mandir, or whatever you call it, shrine, he produced prasad. And I declined it. I was saying, you cannot serve prasad in a mosque. This is a mosque, it's not a temple. And of course, I got myself 3 lines on the front page for doing this. So it is clear that he did it without asking Rajiv. Because had he asked Rajiv, Rajiv would have said no. So therefore, Arun Nehru, thinking that he was bigger than the president, the president of the party, because it was he, Arun Nehru, who had made Rajiv Gandhi the president of the party and the prime minister of India, he just decided to do it behind his back. And Wajat Habibullah, who's in charge of minority affairs, has said in his remembrances of his time that Rajiv told him, I had nothing to do with this. I only learnt about it after it happened. And to me, I didn't ever talk at great length about it, but I happened to be sitting in the room in the Maldives when a call from Arun Nehru came through, and I heard Rajiv speaking to him very angrily. I didn't know what it was about, but this was in the first week of February, just after the locks had been opened. And then I was told that for drawing up Rajiv's tour programs, I should consult with both the Aruns, Arun Singh and Arun Nehru. We met once in a house that was going to become my house, 14 Akbar Road. And after that, I couldn't meet them. So I asked George what's happened. And he laughed. And he says, don't you know, Arun Nehru is out. And so is Arun Singh. And the fact that Arun Nehru was out was revealed when in April of 1986, Arun Nehru went to Kashmir and he had a heart attack. And so Farooq Abdullah arranged for him to rest at Dachigam. And instead of going to his cousin's bedside, Rajiv only sent his personal physician. Never talked to Arun Nehru after that. had an investigation conducted in which both the indicted persons, Fotedar and Arun Nehru, were investigated. The investigation report said that Fotedar had nothing to do with it, but that Arun Nehru was responsible. And so Rajiv took no action against Fotedar, but he did remove Arun Nehru from his cabinet post. It ended finally in Arun Nehru going to VP Singh and creating the National Front, which Rajiv called the National Affront. And that National Front defeated Rajiv Gandhi in the subsequent elections. My proofs are all inductive. From what happened, I worked backwards.
So, do you think then Rajiv Gandhi was largely, you can describe him as someone who was constantly betrayed by his own trusted advisors?
I wouldn't say constantly betrayed. He was betrayed. But please name me a single prime minister anywhere in the world, even dictators,
Yes.
who don't find in their coteries someone or the other. Even Jesus found Judas. So these are Judas Iscariots. And they betray their own patrons. So there's nothing unusual about this. Yes, there are people who turn on their patrons. And Arun Nehru and Arun Singh were examples of this. But they were neither the only example nor the worst example. Even now, I'm not sure that Yogi Adityanath is a very faithful follower of Narendra Modi. I'm not sure that Narendra Modi trusts Yogi Adityanath. So these kind of rivalries in politics are very common. वो लाजमी हैं. And therefore we shouldn't give excessive importance to this.
So, coming to this question, why do you refer to Rajiv Gandhi as the most misunderstood PM?
Because starting with the Shah Bano case,
Yeah.
where liberals of both the left and the extreme left, on the one hand, and right-wing Hindutvists on the other side, felt that the Shah Bano judgment by Justice Chandrachud Senior in April 1985 was a real blow at conservative Muslims and therefore should be followed through. Rajiv, however, wanted to hear what the other point of view was. The judgment came in April 1985. On the 11th of May 1985, Bajiem Banatwala moved a motion during private members' business, that's on Friday afternoons, a motion seeking the government of India, or directing the government of India to negate the judgment of the Supreme Court on the Shah Bano case. That debate went on Friday after Friday between May 1985 and December 1985. As a 21-year-old member of parliament,
Wow.
I've never seen this happen. It was the one time that Rajiv felt that the minority representatives in parliament should be allowed their stay. And R.F. Mohammad Khan, who was a really up-and-coming, modern Muslim, had been named the Minister of State in the Ministry of Home Affairs. He went to see Rajiv to tell him that all these old fogies, they're all mullahs, they're all conservatives, they don't represent the Muslim community.
Yes.
It's people like me who do represent it. So Rajiv said to him, if that is your view, then why don't you participate in the debate? And Arif said, but how can I? I am the Minister of State in the Home Affairs Ministry. And this debate has to be replied to by my boss, the Minister of Home Affairs. Rajiv said, I'll overrule him. If this is your view, go and speak it. So he took part in that debate. And it was a brilliant performance. And Rajiv wrote to him, congratulating him on his performance, which turned out subsequently to be a major political mistake because the debate went on. And every Muslim member of parliament, except Saifuddin of the CPIM, spoke and said that this was wrong, that Muslim personal law had to be interpreted and implemented by the community, and taking these matters to the Supreme Court had insulted them by the words they had used in the judgment. And my own predecessor in Mailaduthurai, who was a Tamil called Pakir Muhammad, who could neither speak English nor Hindi, he spoke in Tamil and endorsed Banatwala's line. Then came Z.A. Ansari, Ziaur Rahman Ansari, who went to Rajiv and said, I too am a minister, but you have allowed Arif to speak, allow me to speak. And his rebuttal of Arif Muhammad Khan, point by point by point, is one of the masterly performances in the parliament. I've read his speech, I've read all the speeches. But he had a card up his sleeve. At the end of his speech, he made a request to Banatwala. He said, I know that our Prime Minister is trying to find a solution which will satisfy all of us. So I request you to withdraw your motion and allow the government to go forward in finding a solution which will satisfy all of us. At which point Banatwala withdrew his motion. And then the ball came firmly into the Prime Minister's court. And the Prime Minister had in the meanwhile extensively discussed Muslim marriage practices and everything connected with the institution of marriage with a large number of Muslims, not only theologians and MPs, but also with journalists. And it seems as if M.J. Akbar, who's a very modern man, he's much more modern than Arif Muhammad Khan is, because I've seen Akbar downing vats of whiskey, whereas I've never seen Arif Muhammad Khan drinking. So this chap, as a very modern 21st century Muslim, was constantly advising Rajiv that the Muslim community is very upset. And there was a major rally of Muslims held in western Bihar, at which lakhs of Muslims turned up. So Rajiv realized that whatever may be the merits of that judgment, the fact is that the Muslim community is upset. And they are saying that we are not fulfilling our pledge to allow the Muslims to have their personal law. At the same time, there were two things wrong with the Shah Bano judgment. One, that judgment was couched in anti-Muslim terms. The second thing was that Shah Bano received only 179 rupees. Oh, I must have forgot. I'm sorry. I'm wrong. She received 179 rupees and 20 paise per month. And Rajiv said the case goes to the Supreme Court and they don't raise the compensation due to her. And the fact of the matter is that after the Supreme Court judgment, her husband was putting 179 rupees and 20 paise into the Supreme Court registry, and she never withdrew the money until she died, I think in 1992 or 93. She never withdrew the money. So there was something symbolic about that money. And she was certainly not a vagrant. And yet the judgment was passed under a provision of the penal code which related to vagrancy. And vagrancy was a prim Victorian word for prostitution. So they were saying they are preventing destitute women from becoming prostitutes by ensuring that vagrant women would receive some kind of compensation to enable them to live an honorable life. And this woman was certainly neither so broke. She also had sons who could have looked after her, or whatever the matter. That was, in that situation, Rajiv felt, what can we do about this Muslim personal law? And he came to the conclusion in consultation with Ashok Sen, who was a brilliant lawyer from the Calcutta Bar and who was his law minister. They consulted with each other and they found that they could produce an act in which they said that the compensation for divorce that is to be paid would not be for the period of iddat, but within the period of iddat. And on that basis, Ashok Sen framed the bill, which is now called the Muslim Women Protection on Divorce Act, 1986. And the fact is that Arif Muhammad Khan was called in by Fotedar and told to go immediately to Mr. Ashok Sen's residence. And Ashok Sen then said, "You're not allowed to reveal this in public, but here is the draft bill." And Arif, being a very brilliant chap, where do I know all this from? From Arif himself. He gave a long interview which was published, and I accessed it on the internet. He was then shown the bill. And being the bright fellow he is, he immediately spotted that the key provision in that act was that the compensation on divorce would not be paid for the period of iddat, but within the period of iddat. And that meant that she could get a lifetime settlement. And having spotted this, Ashok Sen said to him, "Don't explain any of this to the Muslim members of parliament." And Arif then asked him, he said, "Have you shown it to Banatwala and others?" He says, "Yes, I have. And they have not raised any objection. So I'm requesting you, as a minister in our government, as a colleague of mine in the Council of Ministers, to not reveal this, and we will place the bill before Parliament." But when the bill came, and Arif agreed, for 3 months he kept quiet. And then in May, when the bill was presented by Ashok Sen in the Lok Sabha, Arif was sitting in the ministerial benches. Then he got a bright idea. He got up and went to the back seat, the back benches, and wrote out a letter of resignation, which he sent to Rajiv Gandhi and sent to the press. So he became a hero. He was going to be the modern Moses leading the Muslims. And we've now seen where he's ended. He's a BJP governor of Kerala, and probably the worst governor, apart from Mr. Dhankar, that India has ever seen. And he's just towing a BJP line against the locally elected government of Kerala. So the man, despite his brilliance, despite his parliamentary ability, seems to have some kind of eel-like quality which makes him drift from one party to another and end up, for God's sake, as a governor of the BJP. So therefore, that was the story, and it didn't end there. The bill was passed in May 1986. In September, a gentleman who was a friend of my family's and a very well-known Muslim lawyer and jurist, his name was Daniel Latifi, who was also a member of the Communist Party. He filed a special leave petition in the Supreme Court, which was heard between September 1989 and September 2001. In the meanwhile, Rajiv was killed. For 12 years, they cogitated on whether the charges made by Daniel Latifi, which were that the act was inhuman, the judgment was correct, it sought to reverse the judgment, it violated several fundamental rights prescribed in the Constitution, and therefore it should be held ultra vires of the Constitution. And the Supreme Court said that far from reversing the judgment, this bill or this act had actually codified the judgment of the Supreme Court and incorporated it in the Indian law, because the second major change made by that law was that the final decision on whether a settlement made within the period of iddat was fair and just or not would not be made by a qazi, it would be made by a magistrate. So any aggrieved woman could go to the magistrate and say that this is not in conformity with with clauses 3 and 4 of the Muslim Women's Act. The result is that for the last 25 years, and I've known nobody in the media who's proclaiming this, for the last 25 years, all Muslim marriage divorces have been finally settled in the courts, and no Muslim has objected. So he found the solution that Ansari had promised the country he would find, a solution which would respect the Supreme Court judgment and yet respect Muslim personal law and be fair to the lady concerned. He found all of that. And instead of praising him, if today you mention Rajiv, Shabano, appeasement, it's rubbish. He said to me, and I've said that in my book, he said to me, even Sonia doesn't approve. Now, he was very fond of Sonia Gandhi. He had high respect for her. And it hurt him that he would have to go against her wishes in pushing this act. He also said to me, according to my opponents, all women, Muslim and non-Muslim, are against my act. That all men belonging to religions other than the Muslims are against what I've done. So please tell me what electoral advantage I'm getting from passing the bill. I'm trying to hold this country together because we can't hold it together except by being respectful of our largest minority, which is now 200 million strong. It wasn't that strong then. So he was trying to preserve the secular fabric of our constitution, and he's accused of being an appeaser. I think that's very unfair.
So, in my final question to you is, you might say it's an unfair question to ask, or you might say it's a wrong question to ask. But do you see similarity between Mrs. Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi? Because their tenures, just her tenure, she was short, so she died, and then he started.
No, her tenure, her total tenure, was 1 year longer than Jawaharlal.
Yes.
She was Prime Minister for 18 years,
Yes.
with the emergency period in between,
Yes.
when she was out of office. I have made clear in my book that as a civil servant, but an Indian citizen, I was horrified by the emergency. I used to be a Congress supporter because from my childhood onwards, I've been a Nehruvian. But I turned against the Congress. And I also turned against the Congress when the Sikh pogrom
Yes, you
of the
mentioned
first
it in your
couple
book.
of days of November 1986 took place. So 1985 took place. So much so that I actually went to the voting booth to vote against Rajiv Gandhi. I've said all that. Because I felt that the Congress has betrayed the Constitution and has betrayed secularism by its treatment of the Sikhs. Well, fortunately for me, I discovered that Moti Bagh was not in the New Delhi constituency, but in the South Delhi constituency. And in any case, my name was not on the voters' list. So I had to come away without voting. But otherwise, had I cast my vote, it would have been against Rajiv Gandhi. So I did think that Indira Gandhi had violated the spirit of our constitution. I can't say the letter of our constitution because Justice Krishna Aiyar had said that what she did in the emergency was in conformity with the constitution. But I don't think it was in accord with democratic principles. And therefore, even when it happened, even as a civil servant, I was very vocal among my own colleagues about my opposition to Indira Gandhi. And that prejudice continued even after she came back. So when Rajiv became Prime Minister, you've already mentioned that when he was made the Prime Minister on the 31st of October, I was simply horrified. And then I decided to vote against him. And it was only after he became an elected Prime Minister that I began to see that this is a different kind of man.
But sir, I just have a point to make. Why were you horrified if Congress was always dynastic, and if you see you mentioned that it needed a Gandhi then, it still needs a Gandhi now. So I think a Gandhi would be a natural progression. So Rajiv Gandhi was a natural
You're
progression.
completely wrong, I'm afraid. Sorry to be so blunt.
No, sir, no.
The Congress was not always dynastic. After all, Jawaharlal Nehru
Yes.
was not the son of Mahatma Gandhi. And who succeeded Jawaharlal Nehru? A lot of people said it should be Indira Gandhi. And he categorically ruled her out. And he arranged the Kamaraj plan of August 1984, 1964,
64.
in such a manner that Lal Bahadur Shastri emerged as his natural successor. And so when Kamaraj, as the president of the Congress, was trying to find the successor, he came to the conclusion that Lal Bahadur was the choice of the Congress party, not Indira Gandhi. In any case, Indira Gandhi ruled herself out. If the unexpected death of 62-year-old Lal Bahadur had not taken place, if he had lived like I have lived to the age of 84, he would have been Prime Minister all the way to 1986. His death was not anticipated.
Yes.
But when it took place, and the same Morarji, whom the Congress party didn't want, was the one who was insisting that he be made Prime Minister, at that time, the entire Congress leadership, who came to be called the syndicate,
Yes.
approached Indira Gandhi and persuaded her to stand. She was the choice of the syndicate. And then she turned on the syndicate, and ultimately the syndicate went into the Congress O, and she had to start a new Congress R. So please don't distort history. Ours is not a dynastic party. It is accidental that the party insists that the Gandhis are the bonding adhesive of the party. Now, whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, the fact of the matter is that in existential terms, this is the reality. There is no objection. I can't leave it to the media to decide who the president of my party should be. And the president of my party, now Rahul Gandhi, he was the president in 2019. But after his second defeat, he resigned his presidentship. He announced that no member of the Gandhi family will succeed me. Choose your own president. And for 3 months, the Congress wrestled with who will be the next leader. The leader had abdicated the throne. And he said, no member of my family will occupy it. Find your own leader. And then they called the Congress Working Committee because there would be no progress being made. So when they did that, the Congress Working Committee could not name anybody. So then they were asked to retire into private. And they sent Mallikarjun Kharge to tell Mrs. Gandhi that come in at least as an interim president because without you our party can't run. So it is not because they are the sons or daughters of some father or mother, but because the party wants them that they are where they are. And this is not dynastic succession. This is democratic succession. You can fault the Congress party for its choice, but you can't fault the Congress for following a democratic electoral process. Indeed, the only elected member of the Congress is the president. Even last time, when Mallikarjun Kharge was elected, and who nominated him? The entire G23 that had been put up by Ghulam Nabi Azad. And when they were revolting, what is the flag they put up? An alternative to the Congress flag or the white flag of surrender? They all came onto the Gandhi side when the Gandhi family made clear that their preference was for Mallikarjun Kharge and not Shashi Tharoor. And I had pledged my vote to Shashi, so I voted for him.
You would have made
And
a
I
great
made it
president.
public that I had voted for him. And I think that's perhaps one of the reasons why I've met Mr. Kharge twice and just for a few minutes after he became president. I keep asking for appointments, but I don't get them. But we did have an election, and 1,500 of us voted for Shashi Tharoor. So it was an election, it was a democratic process, and I don't think anyone has the right to say who the Congress president should be except the members of the Congress. And they are unanimous that they want Rahul Gandhi. They're also very happy that Priyanka has come in. And now I'm being asked, you haven't asked me, but now I'm being asked, wouldn't it be better to replace Rahul with Priyanka? And I say that that'll never happen. That, like at the beginning of our independence, there was a duumvirate between Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Patel. We've come back to a duumvirate, which is brother and sister, that Rahul will be the titular leader. Priyanka will never become the titular leader, but she will join hands with her brother. And the two of us, or two of them, might still restore the Congress to its former glory. But I don't think we'll get to the former glory until we make the India alliance so strong that we defeat the BJP. And today, when there is no throne and there's no crown, what is the point of fighting over who's going to lead the India alliance? The India alliance can be led by anybody. It is the elections of 2029 or 2034 or whenever it is that we get rid of this wretched chap. As of today, I don't think it is the leadership of the alliance, but the respective leaderships of the parties that constitute the alliance who will determine its future. So we should be concentrating not only on the organization of the Congress, which requires a huge revamp, so much of a revamp that I don't see it happening. So we should, apart from doing this job, which in any case should be done, our leaders should be concentrating on strengthening the alliance, making it more cohesive, making it more credible. Even at this stage, the alliance was only 10 seats behind Mr. Modi. And if they had only been a little stronger, the largest single gathering in parliament would have been the India bloc. So, in those terms, I think there is a future before us, but only if we concentrate on the alliance and stoop to conquer.
So, sir, my question to you is, will you continue writing more books?
Will I continue?
Writing more books as we
My
speak?
wife wants me to.
Okay.
I think I'm quite exhausted. And that may be because for about 4 years, I've been struggling with these 3 volumes. I need a break. But I have a passion, what you may call a magnificent obsession. It is the bettering of India-Pakistan relations. I served 3 years in Pakistan. And in the 43 years that I have been back in India, or 43 years that I've been back in India from Pakistan, I've been to Pakistan more than 40 times. So I've kept a link with that country, very alive. And I'm persuaded that the easiest country in the world to deal with is Pakistan. But only if you have an sustained dialogue with them. I have called it an uninterrupted and uninterruptible dialogue, because if we don't, and we have the kind of episodic dialogues that we have, those Pakistanis who have a gun in their hands and don't want a reconciliation will undertake some kind of terrorist attack. And the minute they give a terrorist attack, we say no more talks. So who wins? It's the terrorists who win. It's not India that wins or Pakistan that wins. And I want to ask this government, it is so brave that it undertakes surgical strikes against the Pakistanis. It sends the Indian Air Force to Balakot. If you have the courage to run a surgical strike against them, why don't you have the courage to sit across a table and talk to the Pakistanis? Because that is the only route by which we can solve the problem. And every time we've actually conscientiously talked to the Pakistanis, whether it's over the Indus Waters Treaty that was signed in 1960 or the Musharraf Manmohan Singh period when we almost settled the problem of Kashmir. It was all solved except for one single clause and would have been solved had Manmohan Singh succeeded in reaching Pakistan before Musharraf was overthrown. So I think the past shows us that Pakistan is a country we can deal with. After all, which other country in the world can you sit down and say, okay, yaar, aapko kya chahiye? Can you do it even with Bangladesh? You can only do it with Pakistan. And then at the end of the day, after dinner, what do you sing? Munni barbad hui, darling tere liye. Can you sing that in Paraguay? Can you sing that in America? You can only sing it in Pakistan. So, and we don't need to go to Pakistan or them to come to India. At the Wagah-Atari border, we can hold the talks so that their side doesn't have to leave Pakistan. We don't have to leave India. We can easily have an uninterrupted and uninterruptible dialogue. And I don't think it'll go on forever. At the end of the day, there may be some issues which we deliberately leave unsettled. We settle everything else and resume the people to people contact. Because, as someone who issued 300,000 visas in Pakistan and did not get a single complaint from the Indian police of misuse of a visa, I say that the Pakistanis are our friends. And the trouble with our Foreign Office is that they think that all policy is determined by soldiers and civil servants. They don't realize that we can leverage the abundant goodwill for India which exists among the people of Pakistan in every province of Pakistan, including Punjab. And that therefore, if we can only show a friendly face to Pakistan, we'll find several Pakistani allies. And I am aware, because I've been interacting with them, Pakistani diplomats, Pakistani civil servants, Pakistani army men. There are many among them who want at least a via media in the relationship with India. Don't forget, they're a country in a political and economic mess. They don't want to be caught between a rock and a hard place. The rock being Afghanistan and its Taliban, and the hard place being India. They don't want it. It's not a comfortable position. So, this is the right time to talk to them. But I'm afraid Mr. Modi says his domestic platform is constantly dog whistling at the Indian Muslim. So if he wants to come to power and stay in power by discriminating against the Indian Muslim, by showing himself to be unfriendly to an Indian Muslim, how can he show himself to be friendly to a Pakistani Muslim? So in these circumstances, I have no hope of progress so long as the BJP is in power, and particularly Mr. Modi is in power, that we'll be able, under an India disposition, to be able to talk to Pakistan and resume the relationship at the point where Manmohan Singh and Musharraf left it in 2007.
Thank you, sir, for your time and for this really uninterrupted and free flowing
Uninterruptible.
and free flowing of ideas. I hope you write many other books, and I because you write very well.
Oh, I was asked by my wife to write my definitive book on Pakistan. I've done the Pakistan Papers, which was my dispatch, my last dispatch from Karachi, updated to 1994. I've written about Pakistan at length in all 3 volumes. I feel that I've said everything I have to say about Pakistan, but these are all personal impressions.
Yes.
They're not scholastic works.
Yes.
So if I have the inclination, I know which is I have a huge library of books on Pakistan and by Pakistanis. So I think I have the basic material to be able to write it. But whether I'll actually do it, only the future will tell. I've also got to do a textbook on Panchayati Raj.
Yes.
I don't think there's anyone else
Yes.
who knows as much about Panchayati Raj or who's been as associated with Panchayati Raj, even in government, than me. So maybe I should leave as my legacy a kind of primer on Panchayati Raj. So there are things to be written still, but is Mani Shankar Aiyar at the age of 84 the one to do it? Or I've had one question fully answered. I can't go back into politics because my party does not want me. So I'll remain in the Congress, but as an ordinary, they used to call them foreigner members. That foreigners is now 25 rupees. But I'll remain as a member of the Congress party. I'll certainly never join the BJP. And I'll certainly never bend my knee before Mr. Modi and Amit Shah. But I don't think I have a political future. I have to fill my time. One thing I could do is a podcast exploring that possibility. And the other is to get some serious work on Pakistan, Palestine, and Panchayati Raj. 3 Ps done. Let me see if I do it.
I hope you manage to do it because the readers would be really interested because each book has come with its volume of information, which would be really beneficial to a large body of readers in the future. And congratulations on your new book, which comes out in February. We'll be back for another podcast then. Since we have not discussed
But
it.
Can I ask you a favor?
Yes, sir.
You have neither shown this book nor the first volume
yes.
to your audience. Can you please do it subsequently?
No, I'll do it now.
You've only got one copy.
Yes.
Rajiv I knew.
Yes.
But there's a first volume.
The memoirs.
The memoirs.
Yes.
So after you left me,
yes,
you have them both shown.
No, I want to show it now only. This is the book that you want to have an extensive understanding on Rajiv Gandhi through the eyes of Mani Shankar Aiyar, and it is detailed on anything that you want to know about Rajiv Gandhi's period and his prime ministership. It is very insightful and deep with a lot of research and a lot of data and personal anecdotes, which would be really helpful for a large body of historians, readers and students and people who are interested in history. Thank you.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the Newsx YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.